Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Global Future Dialogue hosted by Yeosijae Future Consensus Institute. I'm Won-soo Kim. I serve as chair of Yeosijae Future Consensus Institute's International Advisory Board. And before we start, I'd like to inform you that for those who need simultaneous interpretation, it will be provided. Please click the globe-shaped button at the bottom of your screen. And please excuse me, because I want to say something in Korean for those Koreans who need simultaneous interpretation. 오늘 세미나에 그 동시 통역이 제공이 됩니다. 그 동시 통역을 필요로 하시는 분들은 화면 맨 아래쪽에 있는 지구 모양의 버튼을 눌러주시기 바랍니다. 감사합니다. Thank you. With that, I'd like to go back to our web seminar. We call it webinar. Today, we have selected the issue of education, mainly because education is the sector which is most seriously affected by the coronavirus, but I'm afraid receives maybe the least amount of attention from national and international community. COVID-19 has brought a number of fundamental challenges, and with them, it causes drastic changes to the way we live, to the way we work, to the way we and our children study and learn. And out of three sectors which are most seriously affected, health, economy, and education, unfortunately, education sector receives the least amount of attention. And of course, it is understandable because health and economic sectors are maybe life and death and bread and butter issues. But education, if it is neglected now, it will have much longer repercussions for us and for our succeeding generations. Therefore, we chose education as the topic of today's webinar. And this is number 3, Global Future Dialogue, Yeosijae Future Consensus Institute has launched with our friends around the globe. And we also launched a series of research projects in order to get insights and wisdom from the experts around the globe. Today, we are very fortunate to have 3 distinguished panelists with us, and all of them do not require any introduction, but I'd like to just highlight the fact that Irina is the 2-time Director-General of the UNESCO until very recently, and also she served as the Foreign Minister and Ambassador of Bulgaria. And Dr. Joo-ho Lee is the former Education Minister, Minister of Education, Science and Technology, and also he served in the Korean Parliament, and he's now teaching at the Korea Development Institute School for International Policy. And also he was helping Irina and also former Secretary Ban for Global Education for All and Education First campaign. Last but not least, Monika Froehler, our CEO of Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens, which is co-hosting today's online meeting. And she has been leading Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens with a focus on empowering youth and women, which comprises more than 2/3 of the whole world's population. With that, I'd like to now invite Irina Bokova to speak first, but I just want to remind you about the time limit, because I want to please put your questions and comments in the question and answer box on your screen at the bottom of your screen. With those two housekeeping points, now I'd like to turn the floor to Irina. Floor is yours. Please tell us how you see the challenges COVID-19 posed on the education front and how serious the implications for now and for the future.
Thank you very much, Won-soo, and I would like to express also my thanks to the Yeosijae Future Institute, because I do believe that this is an extremely important topic now when we are in this COVID-19 crisis. I'm particularly happy also to be here with the Minister Lee, because for me he is a Minister of Education, Science and Technology, that we have been working very hard in those years supporting the then Secretary General, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, when he launched his Education First initiative in 2013. And then when with the former Prime Minister of UK, Gordon Brown, the Special Envoy for Education, we convened the Financing of Education Commission. Also, Mr. Lee was a very, very prominent member and contributed a lot to the success of the Incheon conference later in 2015, when goal number 4 of the Sustainable Development Agenda was adopted. Now, you ask me, what is the importance of the international organizations and how we can react to the current crisis and what is the future of education? You're right to say that, unfortunately, education did not capture probably the importance that is needed nowadays in order to give a response, albeit more than 1.8 billion students, children were out of school, 63 million teachers, as you just mentioned, and schools were closed. And we sometimes tend to forget that schools and education is not just about learning, but it is also socializing for young children, and also communities, involving communities into establishing some core values. But even before this COVID-19 crisis, we have been in a learning crisis widely recognized in the world. And the role of the international organizations, of UNESCO, of others, the United Nations generally, was to bring this to the forefront of the political debate. When I say the learning crisis, it means that it was not only that millions of children were out of school, around 260 million children were out of school, but they were, even if they were in school, they were not learning. They did not have a proficiency in mathematics, in learning, in reading. And the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, which gives the main data for education for a number of years, has identified last year that there are 617 million children and adolescents that are not proficient either in reading or mathematics, according to their last report. And I would say that this was not a problem, challenge just for the developing countries, although we know that if we break by regions, the data shows that in Central and Southern Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, they really bear the brunt of this crisis. About 80% of adolescents in school, or roughly the age between 12 and 14, are unable to read at the minimum proficiency levels. I would say that this becomes also a burden to the whole of societies, to the international communities, and it deprives children out of their future. Now, when we see the crisis, the COVID-19 crisis, the challenge also is, and the consequences might be that some of these children that were in the lockdown or out of school now may never go back to school. So we have to see how we can bring them to school. This puts additional burden on girls, because in many of these cases, girls were deprived also of schooling and then may never get back to school. Now, we speak that the future of education is digital, and in many countries, schools went into the digital platforms. The problem here is the existing huge digital divide. And this is also one of the problems that the United Nations, UNESCO and International Telecommunication Union has raised for a number of years. We established the Broadband Commission for Development already in 2010, and we have been trying to promote connectivity, because nowadays in the world, half of humanity does not have access to internet. And we know that in African countries, in some of these developing countries, least developed countries, almost 90% of the population does not have an access to internet. We have established that, unfortunately, the global growth in the percentage of households connected to internet is even slowing. And this was an idea, a problem that we established before the COVID-19 crisis. In the last report of the Broadband Commission to 2019, this was quite obvious that if the 4% from the households globally had access to internet in 2018, in 2019, it was even less. They became 53%. So how can we promote connectivity nowadays is the huge question. On the other side, there are other ways and means to promote learning and connectivity. I think we have to look also at the community radios. We have to look at other ways to promote. But if we look at the future, and if we think that the future of education is digital, or maybe mixed, and I hope we will have a possibility later in the debate to speak about that. I believe that we have to promote connectivity in many countries. Even the data for the G20 countries, I would say, are not that bright, because in many of the G20 countries also, because of inequality of access to internet, the quality internet, speed of internet, and unpreparedness sometimes of teachers, it's a problem. So the complexity of this requires really a very elaborate and very flexible approach. So these are my preliminary thoughts, and I hope later in the debate we can go deeper into these problematics. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina, for your very succinct but sober overview of the reality we are in. As you said, before COVID-19 hits us, we already have, as you said, 610 million children with no literacy and no numeracy, no ability to read or no ability to calculate. And now COVID-19 has aggravated the crisis by putting additional 1.6 billion children out of education because of the digital divide you pointed out. Thank you so much for giving us a very frank and, but I think a very serious reminder to all of us. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Lee to add both global but also Korean perspectives.
Thank you, Ambassador Kim. Please allow me to utilize my PPT slides in my presentation. So My talk is about moving forward with high-touch, high-tech education. I will start with global learning crisis and the role of tech in the time of COVID-19, and then discuss moving forward with high-touch, high-tech education, and conclude with consensus building and financing. The global learning crisis has far predated this pandemic, as Madame Bokova clearly pointed out. The Education Commission estimates that 825 million are expected to reach adulthood without the skills they need to thrive in the labor market and society. Remote learning serves as the only option for the more than 1.5 billion students still out of school, with critical concerns regarding the future exacerbation of learning gaps. The reliance on online learning platforms is particularly divisive, even more so than offline learning. Therefore, efforts must be made so that even those from disadvantaged backgrounds are not lagging behind or left out completely. With remote learning an imperative, this crisis is unveiling an opportunity to decipher the merits and demerits of online learning versus offline learning. This experience subsequently serves as a springboard for developing blended learning systems regarded to be a more ideal learning model. For this transformation toward blended learning to succeed, effectively trained and competent human capital and other systemic features must be in place. One of the most promising blended learning models is the high-touch, high-tech education initiative. The high-touch, high-tech approach features a personalized educational experience through an AI-assisted adaptive learning system that reduces the burden of teachers, thereby allowing them to focus on individualized, active, and high-order learning for students. So in defining high-touch, high-tech learning, I will emphasize two things. First one is the high-tech, especially AI technologies, are not replacing teachers. They are helping teachers to transform their roles and augment their capacities. Second, we really have to develop the diverse ways of high-touch, high-tech learning. High-touch, high-tech learning is not a one-size-fits-all learning. We really have to develop different models tailored to adjust to the different contexts of different countries, different regions, and different schools and different students. Next. So according to the very widely known Bloom's taxonomy, students learn to first remember and then understand, and based on what they remember and understand, they are able to learn how to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. But in usual classroom, teachers cannot cover all of these areas of learning. Mostly they just end up with teaching students how to understand and remember. So it's often called rote learning or memorization-based learning and so forth. So many countries, especially in Asia, suffer from these problems. But if you bring in adaptive learning system, artificial intelligence, for instance, they can help students to remember and understand, and they can help teachers to move upward, to focus more on high order learning, learning to apply, analyze, evaluate, and create. Next. So research shows that teaching at the right level consistently improves learning outcomes. So adaptive learning technology tailors the learning experience for students depending on their progress and behavior in real time. Technology allows for scalability in the provision of personalized adaptive learning so that there can be a shift from mass production to mass personalization. Mass production, you are familiar with the factories or industrial revolution era. And mass personalization is the type of service that can be provided through AI and big data. So it's more about a fourth industrial revolution. Next. So you can conceptualize high-touch, high-tech in quadrants. So please see the next slide. Next slide. Yeah. So the many countries will find themselves in the low-touch, low-tech quadrant right now, but spurred by the surge in online learning due to COVID-19, some will rise to the challenge and inch towards the low-touch, high-tech quadrant. But to ultimately progress to the high-touch, high-tech quadrant, more proactive efforts must be made for sustainable and systemic changes. Next. So the crisis has revealed the critical role that teachers play, not only as agents of knowledge delivery, but also as facilitators of human connection and interpersonal learning. Utilizing adaptive learning software for much of the content-driven teaching allows teachers to focus on providing the human touch component necessary for a holistic learning experience. Going forth, it will be important to thoroughly consider the role differentiation between the adaptive learning technology and teachers to ensure an equitable, scalable, high-touch, high-tech experience. Next. So the edtech industry has made immeasurable progress within the last 15 years. Still, more concerted efforts are needed to develop the appropriate infrastructure for affordable, accessible, and convenient high-tech to be realized in all contexts. Next. So I will conclude with consensus building and financing for tangible progress. The global community must come together to swiftly respond to the most pressing needs of the crisis, while simultaneously addressing the long-standing gaps in the system as a whole. Champions must make conscientious efforts to build consensus backed by adequate financial support from both public and private actors. So lastly, to conclude, although the challenges brought forth by COVID-19 are many, it presents a unique opportunity for countries to leapfrog into more innovative, equitable, and sustainable models of learning. How discerningly we choose to act now, to cope, to rebuild, and to newly create will determine the educational landscape following the abating of the pandemic and for many years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your very elaborate and organized presentation of the challenges and also suggestion for possible solution. But of course, the challenge would be how we help countries move from the left side bottom of your 2x2 box, low tech, low touch, to high tech, high touch. And it requires, as you concluded, a lot of collective efforts, concerted efforts for consensus building, as well as financing. Thank you so much. Now, last but not the least, I'd like to invite Monika to tell us about the challenges we have for particularly global citizenship education in these troubling times, and what should be the way forward.
Thank you very much. I want to lend my voice again to the whole audience and also, of course, to the fellow speakers and say that I'm very appreciative to share the panel with Irina Bokova and, of course, with Dr. Lee, former minister, and Kim Won-soo. It's a pleasure always to work with Yeosijae and you. The main challenges that we have been presented with COVID-19 were very evident. So yes, education was very challenged in the times of the pandemic. And I think that all of us witnessed stress on particularly 2 SDGs, 3 possibly. And the 2 that I would like to highlight is the health sector and the education sector. And these sectors, and of course the economic sector, but that's the long-term ripple effect. Those that were under enormous stress and were shown to be vulnerable were SDG 3 and SDG 4. And it was very much up to the adaptability and resilience of communities, of nation states, how well we reacted in both of these sectors to the crisis. We all had a steep learning curve, I believe, but yet some of the challenges became very manifest. And let me structure them into 3 big areas. There are systemic challenges, particularly focusing on the education field. And it means that we do have an increased need to access to education. We have an increased need of continuation to education. And of course, securing the quality of education, because what we have seen was the emergence of hybrid situations or often a great emphasis on the technological front. So major challenges on the systemic level. On the interpersonal level, we saw the challenges that the deprivation of us, the vicinity of other people, the vicinity, the non-existent closeness of the teacher-student relationship, the lack of personal contact. There were phenomena like loneliness, loss of orientation for many students, but even also for teachers, loss of community. And after all, we are human beings, and this societal ripple effects that surely will be felt in the longer run present a new dimension of challenges that we didn't have to tackle before. So the question will be, how do we substitute this interpersonal contact? Can we substitute it? How can we rebuild the social tissue after the pandemic has ceased to be? And how can we reshift the focus to the increased, and in the future this will be definitely the case, to the increased reality of automation. Technology will become more and more prominent. And now on the 3rd strata, so we had systemic and interpersonal challenges, and the 3rd strata of challenges that I would like to highlight is the technological ones, because we do witness the digital divide. We do witness that there is a global north and a global south divide, and even a divide along gender lines. And this disparity, unfortunately, will widen. So the main challenges are the rising inequality in this economic opportunity that is provided with digital connection, and also employment and market access. So what are the solution keywords to it? And as I have alluded to before, it's surely to be found in resilience, adaptability, substitution, and flexibility. But if you're looking at it from an analysis of the global map, if you imagine in front of you the global map, and parallel, you imagine the Maslow pyramid of needs, you will see that on the global map, some of the Maslow need basics, like, for example, physiological needs or like the need of safety, are not fulfilled. So hence, to fulfill those has to be obviously our primary objective. And yet, when you go up in the Maslow pyramid, love and belonging comes next in the strata in the middle, and then esteem and self-realization. Global citizenship education is very much tackling all of that and finding solutions how we as a global community can actually build up global citizen values, SDG knowledge, and 21st century skills for the generations to come. And for me, to close my first argument would be, what we need to do is definitely promote global citizenship education even more, now in the times of the pandemic and in the times afterwards. And why? My most strong argument probably is those countries that have really done well in tackling the pandemic, they are multilateral countries, and they are interested in a global citizen perspective. They have a leadership that reflects that. And I can name names, countries that are open to GCED and that have really performed well in the past couple of decades already on it are, for example, the Republic of Korea, are New Zealand, I would even claim Germany and Denmark. And it is exactly these countries that showed the greatest resilience, the greatest adaptability, and the greatest flexibility in tackling the crisis, be it in the health and SDG 3 related sector, but also in the quality education sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Monika, for, I think also you are building on what Dr. Lee has just said. Your technological dimension refers to the problem Dr. Lee pointed out, low tech, high tech, and also interpersonal also refers to high touch, low touch, high touch, and then systemic as the whole education system. So I think although we don't coordinate our talking points, I think we are in a very sort of in a same mind of on this issue. And I think also we have consensus that the COVID-19 induced education crisis is so serious because it is happening on top of the education gap we have. And because of the digital divide, particularly for those low-income countries, but also low-income households within even advanced economies, digital divide hampers the accessible online education for all. And even I was surprised to see the numbers coming even from Korea. And of course, I will ask the question to Dr. Lee later on. But now I like to put the one common question to all of you, that how we can put the spotlight on the issue of education in a same, maybe not exactly same, but to a higher level of attention, both by national governments, but also by the international community. Because now, as all of you have said, COVID-19 has affected all aspects of human life, but we agree health, economy, and education are the most seriously affected. But among the three, education sector doesn't receive sufficient level of attention. And if we don't take this as serious crisis, then solutions will never come. So I'd like to invite Irina for your response, and then Dr. Lee and Monika. But of course, I want to remind you that we have 3 minutes for each of you, so that we can reserve as much time as possible for the questions from the audience. Irina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. It's an excellent question, because the debate that we had now, I believe, puts the light exactly on the role of education. Education is the foundation, even when we speak about health concerns, safety, lifestyles. Without education, we cannot at all achieve this. We see now the economic crisis in many countries looming. What skills will young people have for tomorrow, for a society that will need to be recovered, reestablished? This is once again where education comes into the spotlight. And I think that goal number 4, that is within the Sustainable Development Agenda, is very relevant in all of its aspects. It's about inclusiveness. It's about overcoming inequalities. It's about quality. It's about new skills that are needed. And it's about lifelong learning. It's about teachers, as Dr. Lee just said. It's about new technologies and how they leverage education. So in all of these aspects, I believe the relevance of goal number 4 is still extremely valid, and it has to be put there. I think once again, we have to put this close link between health and education. It has been forgotten probably for some time. And I remember when Mr. Ban Ki-moon, as Secretary General, launched 2 basic initiatives. One was in health and another was in education, in order to say that we cannot advance in one of them without advancing in the other. So this is where I think the connectivity, the cross between the two is so important nowadays to put on the table. Thank you.
So I fully agree with Madam Bokova and Ambassador Kim that we really have to prioritize education in coping with COVID-19. But maybe we really have to take this moment, this crisis, and try to turn this crisis into an opportunity to make a big change. Because you know that if you really have to continue to spend money on brick and mortar ways of schooling, it will take unsurmountable expenditure to provide all school learning experience to all children. But maybe you can think about different ways of learning and mixing online with offline learning. That could maybe provide much better learning experience for all the children. So for example, global organizations maybe collect more money, but it's not necessarily it's about the money. It's about how to spend the money for better education. So maybe we really have to make a consensus. What could be the future learning model, taking this crisis into an opportunity? So we have been talking about the blended learning for years, but for example, in Korea, there has not much action toward blended learning. But certainly after COVID-19, teachers have realized the effectiveness of online learning to some extent, although there has been a lot of problems and limitations they found, but maybe if it can be developed to combine with offline high-touch learning, maybe it could be much better actually. So I found the recent survey results showing that Korean teachers answer that they will they will continue to use online learning technique after COVID-19 in school because they found it quite useful. So that could be an opportunity for many countries. So maybe international organizations like UNESCO and Ban Ki-moon Center can make a concerted effort, not just to spend more money on education, but to make a big change about how to teach and what to teach for the future generation.
I would definitely motion everything that has been said before and want to use particularly the notion of blended learning as a segue into presenting you a formula and dare me on the formula. So blended learning definitely has the components of digital and of course personal. And it will take probably years until we have found the right balance according to each regional circumstance of how to go about this and how to best do it. But what's clear is that the ingredients for blended learning are on the one side technology and on the other side human capacity, and both can't be underestimated. And I want to add another thought to this, because it's not only in the formal learning sector that we will see the blended education, we will see it in the informal sector increasingly. And let me give you some examples that I think are very relevant for today, this day and age. We see that activism, youth activism, has actually changed lots of policy around the globe. And in fact, many of the efforts, be it Black Lives Matter against racism, be it Pride against or for LGBT communities, be it Me Too for women's rights, or be it Fridays for Future or Earth Uprising for the climate change issues. Much of that comes from the informal sector of education. Much of that is activism. And so we were fortunate as Ban Ki-moon Center together with UNESCO to issue a publication on teaching and learning transformative engagement, which is another term for activism. So how do you teach and how do you learn activism? How do you become a global citizen that is actively taking part in shaping the challenges that we currently have.
Won-soo, can I just add something?
Go ahead.
I think what both Monika and Dr. Lee said was very important, and just about the role of international organization and the whole debate nowadays about the future of education. I'm very happy that not only UNESCO launched the global coalition against COVID-19 and created a large platform in order to exchange experience, but it also looks for the future. And UNESCO established a commission which is about the future of education. I'm very happy. I think it's an excellent idea. And I hope that once this debate and this reflection comes, there will be some very interesting idea globally, including some of those that were mentioned by Dr. Lee, that will be launched as a global benchmarks and also to leverage and scaling some of this new way of looking at education. So UNESCO is taking once again the lead. I'm very happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you all. And also Irina for your additional comment back to Dr. Lee and Monika. And I think also we all agree that here international organization has critical role to play. But if we look at the international reality now, sadly, the roles of international organizations are seriously constrained, mainly because two most powerful shareholders, US and China, cannot agree among themselves, and also tensions between them are rising, and it puts most of other member states in a very difficult position to mobilize consensus. So I know you steered UNESCO out of very difficult times involving, again, funding cut from the US on the Palestinian issue. And now, with so much at stake and so much is expected for UNESCO to step up to the plate on education front. And how do you think we should steer UNESCO with US-China tensions rising and constraining the ability of other member states? So how do you see immediate future role of UNESCO in coping with COVID-19 induced education crisis? Because as both Monika and Dr. Lee said, we have to move from low-tech, low-touch to high-tech, high-touch. But also we should not forget those who remain out of the school and who have been forced out of school because of COVID-19. So we need to take two-track approach to address those who are suffering from digital divide and further marginalized, despite the benefits coming from online education. And then digital divide will only aggravate wealth divide and also gender inequality, many other existing inequalities. And there, I think international organization still remains the only answer. So how, in your view, what will be the best way if you advise a new Director-General of UNESCO?
Very interesting question. Well, as you rightfully mentioned that the multilateral organizations, UN, UNESCO, we see WHO, unfortunately, is also affected by these political, I would say, considerations. I believe that, and I'm very passionate about multilateralism because I believe that particularly nowadays, when we see COVID, we need more multilateralism, not less. The virus hits everybody without race, without political affiliation, without religion, without economic and income differences. And we really need everybody in order to fight this common enemy. On the other side, we should not forget that apart from COVID-19, there are other challenges that are existing, and probably they went a little bit on the second stage of the international attention. I'm speaking about climate climate change. I'm speaking about the loss of biodiversity, but they are there and they're not going to go away. So we need indeed these multilateral platforms. What is important, and I will come back here to what Monika just said, I believe nowadays international organizations have a huge outreach to partners. Partnerships is the answer to this. Partnerships with the civil society, partnerships with the private sector that give some of the solutions, the innovation. And this was also my approach towards the United States. UNESCO has fantastic partners there, universities, cities, in the cultural area, experts. I think this is the way forward. Engagement nowadays and commitment should be the guiding principle of relations with societies. It goes sometimes beyond governments. Of course, governments are very important and governments are there to take decisions. They bear the responsibility. But partnerships, and this is once again in the Sustainable Development Agenda, is the response to solving some of the current problems. So this would be, I would say, engagement should be my advice.
Thank you, Irina. And I'm sure Monika also offer later. But in the meantime, I like to push Dr. Lee a little bit on your 2x2 diagram. And I hope certain countries can serve as best practices for, in your own term, blended education, blending online and offline education. And I think Korea is best placed, but I was surprised to see the report coming from Korean teachers that after several weeks of out-of-school online education, now Korean teachers found that the performance disparity between the students has enlarged because those who have means and digital access and also assisted by private tutoring far excel those who don't have that kind of access. So if Korea cannot bring down the inequality, although we are, I think, one of the best connected countries in the world. So I want to first hear your assessment where Korea currently situates in your 2x2 boxes.
Thank you for very insightful question, Ambassador Kim. I think Korean education right now, maybe before COVID-19, was at the top of the model, old model, far outdated and antiquated model. We were top, but top at the old model. We couldn't somehow explore a new model. Although there has been not any national scale new learning model yet, but Korea has been making full efforts to explore a new model. That's the problem that we share among policymakers in education sector in Korea. So that's why we saw COVID-19 as an opportunity, because although there were huge chances there, we couldn't grab the chance before COVID-19. For example, 2016 survey revealed that only 20-something percentage of schools are connected through Wi-Fi. It's really surprising because we are all connected even in subway system, right? But the schools before COVID-19 have only 20-something point schools have Wi-Fi connection. And we are home to global companies to produce the best digital devices like smartphones, but the poor family of children cannot have a good digital learning devices. And we are also lacking good learning platforms. it turned out that after COVID-19, the learning platforms that our schools are utilizing are very, very low tech and not really prepared. So that's why we have seen a wide discrepancy after COVID-19. So my suggestion is that if we really upgrade our online learning system, that could reduce inequality. But with current outdated online learning system, it's inevitable that we saw increasing gap. So this is the opportunity to rapidly upgrade online learning system and combine them with offline high-touch education. So maybe if it turns out to be successful, Korean education, nowadays people already call it K-edu, like K-health or K-pop. K-edu could be the model for the countries.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your frank assessment. And I thought Korea should belong to high touch, high tech, but as you indicated, we are still, as far as schools are concerned, low tech, low touch. So we have to move rapidly upward. And now to Monika, we have touched on digital divide from mostly hardware and software. But I think, as you pointed out, content for global citizenship should be now built in a right way to teach next generation from their very early ages about what sustainable lifestyles would mean for human beings, but also for the planet. And also how we should ramp up our efforts to educate the educators. Because unless we educate the educators first, we'll never be able to educate our next generation. So two questions to you: content and how we should educate the educators.
Thank you so much. Indeed, content for GCED is already quite well available. However, sometimes the accessibility of it seems to be hampered because people don't know where to find it. Now, UNESCO has incredible resources for it. And obviously, a couple of universities also stand out and have whole syllabi and curricula constructed. What do we want to provide learners with? I think the goal of education is very well defined by saying that it's building the capacity to build economically productive societies. And also, of course, to develop, as you pointed out, Kim Won-soo, sustainable livelihoods. And also, education should lead us to contribute to peaceful and democratic societies, but also, and this is probably the key to GCED as well, enhance individual well-being. So what is the content? What can the content be? The Ban Ki-moon Center is very fortunate to partner on this one with UNESCO, and drawing on the vast experience of UNESCO and other partners, we are venturing into something that is called Mission 4.7. Mission 4.7 is focused on SDG 4, target number 7, on global citizenship education. We are forging together an alliance and a consortium around UNESCO. The DG of UNESCO will lead the effort, Audrey Azoulay, together with Ban Ki-moon and with Jeffrey Sachs, who is, as you know, the chair of SDSN. And also a private sector partner will be part of the consortium. And we're also fortunate to count on Irina Bokova's support for this consortium. And this task force will look into what are the materials that are out there and how can they be made easily accessible? Where can we collect best practice? And how can this instruments, toolkits, materials be most useful to pedagogical staff around the globe? And of course, it's a long haul project, but it shall take place in partnership. As Irina pointed out before, partnership is key. So it needs to have representatives not only from the educational sector, but also from the private sector. Also, of course, from governments, and the absolute representatives of UNESCO and international organizations will also be very instrumental for that. So content-wise, there will be surely great leaps forward. Now, I see what Mr. Lee has said, the former minister, as very key to even the undertaking of Mission 4.7, because high tech, high touch should be the lighthouse. And if we are eyeing at countries being the ships in the ocean, we are hopefully not independent ships in the ocean, but will go forward towards the lighthouse of exactly what has been stipulated together as an armada. Yet some ships will not be as advanced as others. So hence the material needs to be tailor-made, obviously, to the local context, and needs to pick them up, needs to really assess the country's needs where they are at this state.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Monika, about the need to develop in our jargon, UN jargon, common but differentiated content accessible by everybody. Now, with that, now I like to ask two of each. So I like to ask two of you the same one set of questions. The question I received from the audience is about what kind of education is needed at schools in anticipation of fourth industrial revolution. And even our audience is worried about, although Dr. Lee said about AI assisted education, but there is a concern that AI overtaking human beings. So how we should prepare our next generation for the coming fourth industrial revolution, and also how we establish our relationship with artificial intelligence. So first, maybe switch the order a little bit. Dr. Lee first, and then Irina.
Another good question. So the fourth industrial revolution, the main driver of the fourth industrial revolution could be artificial intelligence. And one of the major concern or expectation about artificial intelligence is that maybe the jobs that our school children entering maybe primary school, when they graduate, they found jobs that are not in here today. Maybe 5% of jobs are not known to us. So maybe there has been a really big shift of labor market. So what is the use of education for the jobs that would disappear someday, right? So that is really a big challenge to educators. So that's why the fourth industrial revolution posed a big challenge to educators, what to teach and how to teach. And that's why I saw COVID-19 as a kind of opportunity, because without COVID-19, maybe it's really hard to persuade. We really have to make a big switch, big shift toward high-touch, high-tech. So to combine AI technologies with teachers will really make school system to offer much better learning experience, so that our future generation can be equipped with the skills that are needed in the fourth industrial revolution era. One example is, one example of skills already been noted as two speakers today, the collaboration, creativity, critical thinking, and so forth. So the communication. So these 4 C's are already been emphasized in many countries. But along with 4C, we also have to emphasize digital literacy, data literacy, and technological and human literacy, so that we really have to make a balance. But one thing for sure is that we really need to make our future generation to be ready and not to be replaced by AI. Right? That's really a big challenge. So that's why we need to make a big shift to the high-touch, high-tech learning system. And the one concern that the audience asked is the question about whether AI is replacing teachers, and that question has been I've been asked by those kind of questions a lot of times, but you know that I found out I mean seen many exemplary schools pioneering in those new technologies and new pedagogies. And one common feature is that they combine these two features, I mean, high tech and high touch together. Otherwise, they cannot offer good learning opportunities, because the learning that that requires for the future generation is the learning not just about the knowledge, but about high order thinking skills and also social and emotional learning. So that's why the future generation really needs the touch of human teachers, in addition to artificial intelligence and technologies. So maybe this kind of debate should, I mean, we really should have a lot more debate about this, a lot more experiment about this, and we really have to figure out the way that we should offer much better learning experience through the combination of high touch with high tech.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your answer. Irina, you have the floor.
Well,
on the same question.
Yes, it's really a very interesting question, and this debate started, of course, well before COVID-19. The fourth industrial revolution and the new skills that are needed nowadays occupies the mind of the businesses, of the education systems and others. And it is more than obvious that some skills are not needed anymore, that are new skills that are coming. And this is exactly about the quality of education. I can only concur with Dr. Lee that the new skills that are needed are very much linked to the capacity to analyze, the problem solving, the teamwork, the communication, I would say the creativity, which is very much nowadays into the minds of educators. And that is why there is a lot of thinking when we speak about STEM education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Nowadays, we speak about STEAM education, about arts, because this is where creativity also comes into the picture. And the combining, of course, with the technological literacy, with the digital literacy, with the advancement, that can really unleash a lot of human potential. We often speak about renewable energies, and I have always thought that the ultimate renewable energy, this is human ingenuity. And I think nowadays we just have to unleash it, and this is what education goal and responsibility should be. I think this is something very important. It doesn't mean, and I totally concur with Dr. Lee, it doesn't mean that the role of teachers is less. It is just different. And this is where I think the pressure on teachers also is coming nowadays very much into the spotlight, because nothing can substitute a good teacher. A teacher that can open a mind of a child towards creativity, towards the world and values. And we often forget that schooling is also about socializing. Schooling is about relating with the other. Schooling is about our community. It's about solidarity, empathy, something that we need nowadays in the world, and which is also linked to the global citizenship education. Right, Monika? I think this is where also the role of schooling is coming. And Dr. Lee mentioned it also in his presentation. So this dual, I would say, role of teachers needs more support for them and not less.
Thank you, Irina, and also Dr. Lee, for your answers. I absolutely agree with you that future skills, our next generation needs is interpersonal, first of all, and then, as Monika said, adaptability and resilience in their thinking, because we do not know how different the world from now, maybe 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So we have to teach them, think differently, creatively, but also adaptably and resiliently. So with that, now I'd like to ask questions to both Monika and Dr. Lee. A new set of questions asked by our, I think, a mutual friend, Mansoor Sumro, who joined us online. And his question is, with the digital divide, particularly gap between global north and the south, how we can help developing world to meet the SDGs, in particular SDG 4, when they lack the basic capacity. 80 to 90% of sub-Saharan Africa, for example, do not have any access to computers or internet, and how we can help them meet the SDGs on top of the added challenges from COVID-19. And I'd like to remind you of 3-minute limit for further discussion. So Monika, you have the floor now.
Gladly. It's the $1 million question, indeed. How can we close this gap, this digital divide that is widening? And yet what's very promising are some of the solutions that are out there. And let me delineate some. So maybe you have heard about the charity One Laptop Per Child. This was the effort of providing all the children across the globe, particularly in marginalized community, with a laptop for free. Sort of successful, but of course there is room to scale. Or look at the example of MIT, the Media Lab, developed with the OLPC Foundation, a $100 laptop that had educational software already downloaded, and it was basically then just connecting it to electricity, which is, case in point, a problem in itself, but yet there are efforts like these. Look at NEPAD Africa, where an e-school program to provide 1 million primary and high schools with computer equipment, so that the school infrastructure would become the multiplier for more than just the 1 million schools, but it would actually pretty much entail all of the school children that are part of that. And yet we see, for example, even in India, that some of the methods are shifting away from computerized technology to telephones, because telephones are connected to satellite systems. And you have the Indian Space Research Organization that launched EduStat, which is a communication satellite providing educational materials. So I think there are even, and if you look at the Gates Foundation is doing a lot on technical provision for ladies, particularly for women, to give them access to financing, to online financing. And it's done via mobile phones, because mobile phones are further spread and reception is definitely easier to obtain than it's the case with high-speed internet. So there are efforts, but yes, of course, they have to be ramped up, and particularly the Global South definitely needs more of our attention to have this incredible gap that we see widening, not widening further, and particularly COVID will show that economically the ripple effects will be felt in the long run, and the gap between the haves and the have-nots will widen even further. And education has a key to try to close that gap.
Thank you, Monika, for your answer. Dr. Lee, you have the floor.
Yeah, I really like the Monika's comment on One Laptop Per Child initiative, and maybe I can continue on her point. One Laptop Per Child was started in 2005, 15 years ago, and the technology at that time was much poor than compared to the current technology, because for the past 15 years, education technology has been really progressing very rapidly. So we have a big chance to provide. The one laptop per child end up just with 1 million laptop. Although they actually have a goal of providing 100 million students. So the reason why they just came short of their goal is maybe because of poor quality of technology and so forth. But now we have much better technology, and we have a much big needs. I mean, we have witnessing a widening gap, mainly due to the gap in access and access to the device and network and so forth. So this is really important goal to provide accessible the internet connectivity and accessible and affordable internet connectivity and network for the children in developing countries. So why we make a international project to provide like the OLPC that they call OLPC and one laptop per child, but maybe current years saw a huge development in networks, device, and learning platforms and learning content and software. So maybe we can combine all those new changes and development into one project and one device, and provide them to the children in developing countries, who are really in need of a better online learning opportunity. That could be a really fantastic project, a global project that we will really make a concerted effort. But I haven't heard about that kind of creative the design of a global project that could benefit a lot of children nowadays. So maybe we really have to think about maybe redefining and rethinking a global project, ODAs and so forth, how to help children to have more affordable and accessible online learning opportunity. And I think there are huge room of potential to benefit all developing countries with much lower expenditure than before because of the rapid progress in technologies. So we have and also I agree with Madame Bokova about the need for partnerships with private companies and also the other organizations. So maybe we can extend global partnerships to work with private companies, global the ITC companies to offer much better learning platforms, contents combined with the learning platform, I mean the devices and networks. That would be an excellent global project.
Thank you, Monika and Dr. Lee. Again, I think the time has come for us to have a fundamentally look at the way we are handling education goal with the COVID-19. And as Dr. Lee just said, there is now very urgent need for us to have very serious re-examination of the approach we have taken. And I think we need fresh and holistic examination of SDG Goal 4 and its targets, because I think the elements we are discussing today, how to bridge the digital divide and how to improve content for universal and differentiated online and offline blended education for all, is completely missing in the current SDG structure. So I think, and also with the interest so low now in even helping Africa to address their digital divide. And now I like to maybe ask each of you to comment on how we address the gap we have, the current SDG structure, and also how we can use this as an opportunity to bring new solutions. Because although this presents us with huge challenges, but if we tackle this problem right, then we can solve many problems, because education is an enabler, and also education is an equalizer. So with those two E's on education, I'd like to ask each of you to give your final comments on these two fundamental issues for the future. First, Irina.
Thank you very much, Won-soo. I think this is the big question, and this is the question nowadays when we speak about the response to the crisis. We just have to put back education on the global political agenda. It has to be recognized that education is the foundation of human development. Education is the response to the crisis. Education is the response to the future crisis that may come in the area of economy. Education is about bridging the gap, the inequalities. Education is also about healthy lifestyles. Education is about sustainable development, basically. And the question nowadays is not, in my mind, where we want to go. Goal number 4 has formulated very rightfully where we want to go. The question is how we go there. And this is where all this innovation, that is the big opportunities, as Dr. Lee just said, that are opening nowadays to accelerate some of the ideas that existed before but were not implemented. It was business as usual, and business as usual is not an option anymore. If we want to go to a new normal, education should be indeed with all the new elements that are there, the new skills, the responses, has to be put seriously on the global political agenda, and also with the respective financial support. For the least developed countries, there should be an international aid. There should be all the different measures from the financial institutions in terms of alleviating or eliminating their debt, giving more technological support to them. In the middle income countries, it's not about probably more resources, it's about how you spend these resources and how to prioritize education, even for the G20 countries, many of them, how you prioritize education in your national budgets. So once again, I think education is the response. It's an opportunity there, and the world should not miss this opportunity. So this is my main message.
Thank you, Irina, for your passionate appeal for of course, refocused, but also new approach for the future of education as a new normal after COVID-19. Dr. Lee, you have the floor.
So I completely agree with Madam Bokova about the need to rethink education, reinvent education. And I think we can turn this terrible crisis of COVID-19 into an opportunity, particularly for education. And we really have to figure out how to turn the big idea into global actions. You know that for Korea, I have witnessed a big change in the minds of teachers, in the minds of policymakers, that they now think that it's time to make a big change. They think they have to explore new ways of teaching and to figure out new content of teaching. So this is, I think, a really big momentum for many countries. And I also think that we really need a partnership, a global partnership and partnership with private sectors, because educators alone cannot make a big change like this. So maybe we really have to open up to partner with diverse players. So I like Madame Bokova's ideas that we really have to bring in private companies, private players to work with educators. And also, I fully agree with the need for much stronger global collaboration to explore new learning models after COVID-19. So this is, I think, really a big moment of change. And I think this event organized by Yeosijae Future Consensus Institute really provide a really good the opportunity for a dialogue among the policymakers and leaders. So maybe this is the starting point, and I think personally Korea should also play much leading role in exploring new models, because Korea has experienced a lot of issues and problems that were brought by the antiquated old outdated learning model. We have suffered a lot, and now that's why we really feel the need to rethink education. So maybe we can come up with much better model. Maybe high touch, high tech could be really diffused in the sides of Korean education, and maybe we can become a hub to share the experience of new learning models.
Thank you, Dr. Lee, and again for your passionate plea to all Koreans, including me. And also, I wholeheartedly agree with your view that Korea should lead the world out of COVID-19 induced education crisis by providing best practices, as you described, high tech, but aided by high touch. So I think that way Korea can prove that it can lead the world in education sector, not only for Korea, but also for the world, but also for the future generations. Thank you so much, and look forward to your active engagement in Korea, because I was personally surprised to see the survey done by Korean teachers about the expanding performance discrepancy only after several weeks of online learning. And unless we address it sooner rather than later, even it will aggravate the existing inequalities we have within Korean society. So I look forward for your continuous active role, both for Korea, but also for the international community. Monika?
A brief closing remark from my side. I can't agree more than I want to with Irina. Education is the response. I agree with you, former Minister Lee, that we need to rethink education. I also think it needs the components of partnership and exactly of what we defined as blended education, between a hybrid, between the forms of interpersonal and technological advancements. It will need the political will, it will need the finances, and it will need the expertise. And the sweet spot of sort of these areas coinciding, we will hopefully find the advancement that we need. Every journey, I think there is this quote, every journey starts with the first step. So my appeal to not only the audience, but to my own undertaking at the Ban Ki-moon Center is resilience, flexibility, and adaptability to the educational system. And as every journey starts with the first step, we looked at this at the Ban Ki-moon Center microscale as well. How can we be adaptive? How can we be flexible? And we really converted many of our fellowship programs, scholarship programs, mentorship programs also to the online space. We offer online classes on global citizenship, on women empowerment, on the SDGs that are freely available to anyone. And if you're interested, SDG Academy has lots of resources out there. There is UNESCO UpCU campus that has lots of resources out there. So as every journey starts with the first step, we tried to exactly live by these principles now during the COVID pandemic. And we are hoping that in partnership, particularly with UNESCO and other institutions like Yeosijae, we will be able to advance the education paradigm to something closer to what we have discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Monika, for your passionate plea for all of us to continue our journey to find a right mix of online and offline education, but also right mix of technology aided, but also supported by interpersonal, human touch, personal interaction between the students, but also between the teachers and the students. And I look forward to a continuous contribution by the Ban Ki-moon Center, to which Irina and I also share responsibility as its board member. So thank you so much for all of you for excellent discussion we have today. Of course, this is such a big, really big issue. And I don't think we can solve the problem with 1 day, 1.5 hour discussion. But as all of you alluded to, today is the first of such efforts in a long journey. Try to find a global solution to the global challenges we have now on education, already existing but aggravated by COVID-19. And on that journey, my wish is to continue to engage with all of you, but also I like to thank all those who joined us today online by asking so many relevant questions to us. And I also thank my special thanks should go to the staff of Yeosijae, but also staff at the Ban Ki-moon Center for Global Citizens in Vienna. In fact, I think Dr. Lee and I are the minority here. We are all supported and surrounded by very excellent and active group of female leaders. And I think we have made the right step, at least in addressing gender inequality. And with that, I hope we can continue to search for the solutions. We hope our future generations can employ. And with this note, although it is a little sad to finish our discussion today, but as I said, let us continue our conversation and our engagement with the whole world, because we have to work together to build a better world and better future for all. So thank you so much. And I think we can see each other again pretty soon. Thank you so much. And also thank you so much to all those joined us online today. Thank you.